Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sukanya, and welcome to this research session. The team will be covering the topic office markets, why the role of workplace will not diminish. As we emerge from a nationwide lockdown and as businesses get back to functioning in the new normal, it is imperative that we are aware of the latest trends and workplace recommendations that we are sharing with occupiers. Today's session will be delivered by Megha Maan and Vaishnavi Bala. We would really like to make this an interactive session. Hence, we request you to post all your questions in the questions tab that you see on the box, and we will take it during the Q&A round. Without further ado, Megha, I hand it over to you, please.
Thank you, Sukanya, and hello all. Welcome to the second research webinar series. As Sukanya mentioned a minute ago, our endeavor through these webinars is to enable and empower all of you to engage thoughtfully with occupiers and your clients. We will be hosting these webinars once a month, focusing on insights from our reports, database, and some evolving models that research is working on. Today's presentation will be led by Vaishnavi, who will take us through the Bangalore office market and investment trends, which will be then followed by the role of workplace in the current situation. And we will conclude with the findings of our in-house research matrix that highlights the trade-off between costs and efficiency and productivity of employees. So without taking more time, I would like to hand over to Vaishnavi for the Bangalore overview.
Thank you, Megha. Thank you for joining, everyone. So I'm going to start with the Bangalore market. So I think most of us do know that Bangalore is the market leader when it comes to office space. Over the last 5 years, Bangalore has had a gross absorption on an annual basis of about 14.3 million square feet. So let's see what is in store this year for the city. When we look at the supply perspective, last year we saw about 10.7 million square feet of supply. And this year we had projected about 20 million. This was pre-COVID, and we continue to stick to about 20 million of supply. We expect that to happen this year. Of course, this does depend on the rate of infections, COVID infections that are spread in the city, and also depends on whether there is going to be another lockdown. So there are certain criteria there. But overall, as of now, we expect about 20 million to come through. When we look at from a demand perspective, like I mentioned earlier, Bangalore has been the leader. And last year, Bangalore saw about 15 million square feet of absorption, gross absorption. And earlier this year, we had actually forecast about 14.2 million square feet. But now, in the last 2 quarters, what we're realizing is that a lot of occupiers are actually postponing their leasing decisions. They are on a wait and watch mode right now. So we actually revised the gross absorption forecast to about 11.5 million square feet. So as a result of this 20 million of supply that we're expecting and the 11.5 million of absorption, the vacancy of the city, and we're talking about grade A and grade B, vacancy is likely to go up about 13%. And this is the first time in recent years that it will actually go to a double digit. We are as of now standing at a late single digit, about 9.8, 9.9% is what we are looking at right now in terms of vacancy. So what is the silver lining here? So although there will be a decline in leasing from what we had predicted earlier and from what the city saw earlier last year, the city will continue to dominate office space leasing pan-India. In fact, what we are expecting is that Bangalore will continue to have about a 30% share in gross absorption in 2020. This is in line with what has been happening in the last couple of years. So interestingly, now we look at what are the key sectors that are driving demand going ahead. So over the last 1 or 2 months, even during the lockdown, some sectors have been seeing a pickup in hiring. Starting from e-commerce, there are companies like Amazon, Dunzo, which are sort of saying that they are going to hire going ahead. E-tech, gaming companies, these are some companies again which are likely to be hiring over the next few months. In technology, there is companies like Intel, there's Wipro who already mentioned that they're going to be hiring. And there's, of course, fintech, especially insurance companies, which have already, about 2 or 3 of them have already stated that they're going to be hiring 5,000 employees over the next few months by the end of the year. And there is pharmaceutical. So overall, we believe that Bangalore is quite well placed. Yes, there is going to be some drop in demand, but it is still quite well placed. And we might expect the recovery to take place sooner than other cities. Let's take a look at that. Why is that? So Bangalore is the fastest growing economy amongst key Asian cities. As per Oxford Economics, between 2020 to 2024, Bangalore is likely to grow at 9.9%. And this is amongst the, this is the fastest amongst the Asian cities. So what works for Bangalore from a CRE perspective? A, it has very good quality stock available, which we all know, and we'll delve into that later as well. The rentals, especially if you compare with the two other metros, is still at a lower rate, the rentals. So there's a huge competitive advantage there itself. And of course, it has a very well-developed ecosystem in terms of tech companies and IT companies. So in fact, now we look at the whole global in-house scenario, going to the next point. Bangalore has been cultivating innovation for the last few years, and that has made global in-house centers extremely important. So what do these GICs, also called as global in-house centers, do? They're not your typical voice BPO companies. They are in fact very central to the company's strategy, because they undertake activities like innovation, like R&D, like product development, etc., which makes it very critical. India already, Bangalore already accounts for about 40% of these GICs when looked at from a pan-India perspective. And interestingly, there was a survey done in March and April when there was a lockdown in major parts of the world. So there was a survey done by Zinnov in which 55% of the companies who surveyed said that they were considering setting up either new GICs in low-cost locations or upping the hiring in the ones that already exist. And through this, we know that Bangalore has a huge advantage because amongst the other top cities, it already has a good ecosystem in place for this. And also another reason is that when we go on to the next part, the third point, that Bangalore not only has a wide talent pool, but it also has a very deep talent pool when it comes to technology especially. So verticals such as cyber management, such as artificial intelligence, they have a very high employability rate in Bangalore. And we have HR consultants who've been saying that temporary hiring has risen in the last 3 or 4 months and is further expected to rise in the next 18 months. I've actually written a blog about this earlier last month, where I talk about why Bangalore will rebound faster than we think. So do go through that, and you can reach out to me for any doubts you have. So overall, Bangalore definitely will rebound faster next year, led by 3 key things. Its high employability rate, which is the whole huge deep tech talent it has, the trust on innovation, and an already well-developed ecosystem in terms of technology. Now we'll move on to the micro markets. So what we've done is we are actually in the process of doing a forecast, our quarterly forecast, which we do for the year. So what we've done is we've broken it down in terms of separate micro markets. So there are no surprises here. Outer Ring Road is likely to account for about 4.5 million square feet of gross absorption. And there is about 7.5, close to 7.5 million square feet of supply that we see here. And it's really interesting because right now ORR, both the ORRs stretch combined together, has a vacancy of about 2.5%. So when this supply comes in, I think it will be a bit of a breather for in these conditions. And like I mentioned earlier, anyway, the vacancy of the city is likely to go up. Whitefield is again, we expect about 5.3 million square feet coming in this year. And North Bangalore, interestingly, North Bangalore already has a comparatively higher vacancy currently, and with about 1.6 million square feet, we believe that the vacancy here could go further up. Not much supply coming in CBD, as you can see, just about 0.5 million square feet. So this basically just gives you a brief about what are the different demand and supply scenarios that we are projecting in Bangalore across different micro markets in terms of what might happen where in terms of demand, supply, and the existing stock. Next. So now here I'm going to touch upon the Bangalore investment landscape. So over the last few years, Bangalore has indeed become quite attractive for investors. And in fact, in 2019, for the first time, Bangalore reached the second spot in garnering investments. As we see here, Bangalore garnered about 655 million last year. Unfortunately, there have not been any deals that we've recorded this year. So I'm going to be mostly talking about what happened last year and the trends over the last couple of years. So if you look at the map on the right, Bangalore here accounts for about 11% of the total inflows that were recorded last year. Typically, Bombay has been the highest, and it continues to be, but Bangalore did overtake Delhi NCR to come at the second spot. And here, if you notice, about majority of the investments came in from the foreign funds. In terms of in terms of the office sector, about 92% came into the office sector. And if you again look at the map here, you will see that the first preference for investors has been office, followed by residential. And this again mirrors what has been happening per se in the sector. If you look at the chart below, we see that we have two sets of data sets here. One is the investments in during 2016 and 2017, and the next is 2018 and 2019. So if you look at the chart here, you'll see that how the investments in office has picked up in 2018 and 19, while it has dropped in residential. And this follows sort of an overall trend that we are seeing in India as well, where investors are sort of, also this does follow the whole NBFC crisis, but we are noticing how investors are sort of more gung-ho about the office sector. And that it brings me to the next point, actually. So amidst whatever is happening right now in terms of COVID, etc., REITs are still quite attractive. In June, there were media reports that how Blackstone has done a block sale of about 8% of its stake in Embassy REITs. And in fact, it was met with a great response, and they basically got a higher sum than what they had earlier expected. So I think this is a great signal, because it talks about how attractive REITs would be, despite what there have been apprehensions which we hear about recently regarding office. So 2019, what were the key attractive destinations in Bangalore? There was Outer Ring Road and there was SBD. In Outer Ring Road, we saw KKR investing in a under construction embassy project. It is still under construction, not yet ready. Of course, there was the huge deal of where Blackstone bought in Tanglin, which is Global Tech Village. These were the two big office deals that happened last year. In terms of residential, Hines invested in Shapoorji Pallonji's Park West project in SBD in the area of Benipet. So these were some of the big deals that took place in Bangalore last year. This year, unfortunately, in the first quarter, we've not recorded any deals for Bangalore, but hopefully we might record a few deals in Bangalore in a couple of quarters going ahead. So that's it from me from a Bangalore perspective. Megha, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Vaishnavi. That was quite insightful. I would now just like to highlight different views about working from home, working from office. There is a lot of chatter about our office is dead, is remote working the new office. We see a lot of headlines in the newspaper nowadays talking about this. So we will look at both aspects, the employee and the employer perspective, in the next couple of slides. So Colliers conducted a survey on LinkedIn. Most of us must be aware that was done very recently in May, June, to understand how employees are viewing this phenomenon. Now we notice that a large number of employees are looking for working from home, but to just an extent of 2-3 days. Minded, we are not saying throughout all 5-6 working days, but 65% say that they would like to work from home only for a couple of days or maximum 2 or 3 days. And there is a minority of employees who say that they would like to work from offices only. So what does it infer, right? It implies that occupiers and companies need to take a balanced approach. A rigid workplace policy may not work and may impact productivity at large. Now, this is something we have tried to analyze in our model, which we will discuss a few slides later. But other aspect which I would like to talk about is about the employee's view about workplace, which is the right-hand side of the slide here. Wherein you can see 47% of the employees seek collaboration, and 33% still believe that workplace will continue to be important. So in a nutshell, the role of employees, the role of workplaces is not going to diminish. technology will be an enabler for workplaces in future. Now let's take a look at what occupiers are saying about this. So the results on this slide is about what occupiers are saying. This was done through an occupier survey that research had conducted. The details of this are actually in the report which is released a couple of days ago on the 1st of July, titled Occupiers Strategies to Repopulate Workplaces. So here we see that 54% of the occupiers see no change in CRE portfolios. However, very interestingly, 25% say that they will expand. Now that is a good news. And we already know that certain sectors like tech, commerce, fintech, edtech, education, etc., will expand this year. Next, we see that 45% of occupiers are planning to bring up 30% of their workforce back to offices. That means they will have in a staggered manner. But what we see is occupiers are being cautious. They are undertaking a mix of measures to adhere to social distancing norms, such as rotational shifts, flexible working hours, etc. Now, let us take a step back and let us understand that why working from home entirely is not sustainable in the long term. Now, from a company's perspective, there are certain costs associated by working from home, right? Especially IT and tech companies would have to spend extra on softwares for data protection, privacy, etc. Not to mention even the BFSI occupiers, right? Now, certain companies wish to have the employees work remotely, will also have to spend on home infrastructure, home office infrastructure, right? This will result in a monthly cost. Second, collaboration may be a casualty of remote working. We may see less engagement levels if working from home is extended for a long term. Lastly, I think there will be huge risk associated with cybersecurity. We all must be experienced that the phishing exercises have actually gone up. So this plays a very important role for companies where data is of prime importance. From an employee perspective, employee morale can be affected as long bouts of work from home may result in drop in efficiency. Now, surveys, including our own survey that we had done, revealed that employees tend to work longer hours when they're working from home. Now, if this is done over a period of time, this will lead to employee burnout. Lastly, we all know India has a young population. Now, with an average age of 29 or so, it may be difficult for certain groups who are living in co-living facilities or in PGs, etc., making them less amenable to working from home. Not to mention, there are also challenges of data sharing and data privacy if such groups are working from home. Now, all this led us to deep dive into a trade-off between remote working and employee efficiency levels. Now, what we have done is the team has come up with a model that looks at the aspect of working from home and also the efficiency levels which are achieved. Now, please note the model is still evolving and is based on certain assumptions. If you have any questions and suggestions, we will be happy to incorporate that. Now, Vaishnavi will take you through those models in the next few slides. Also, just to remind our viewers, please drop the questions to the question box in the panel. We will take them up post our presentation. Over to you, Vaishnavi.
Thank you, Megha. So, what are we looking at here? So we tried to look at how does a company look to change its or optimize its CRE portfolio, as we see that a lot of organizations are moving their workforce to home. So the question that we wanted to seek is, what is a trade-off when between cost and efficiency for a company as it shifts its workforce home? So as a lot of companies, most of them are either working from home completely or right now are sort of inching towards going back to offices. So what does our study find? Our study finds that as the company shifts its employees to work from home, the efficiency drops, of course, and so does the cost. The cost and efficiency both drop. But what we realize is that the efficiency drops at a much faster pace than the cost savings that a company achieves. Now, here we are not talking about a large company with presence all over the world with like more than 50,000 employees. No, we are talking about a very mid-sized companies. And we came upon this through certain assumptions and basis. So I'll just quickly go over that as well. So we looked at it from both aspects, from a cost perspective and an efficiency perspective, because these are the two things that we're actually comparing. So when we look at it from an office cost perspective, here we have a base case scenario where we're looking at a 90,000 square feet of office space and with a workforce of 1,000 employees in office. So we've taken a rental of about 95 rupees per square feet per month. That is our rental that we've assumed. And of course, so that is our rental. And then we have our OPEX cost, which includes your CAM, parking, FM cost, all of that. So this is our basic office cost, the operational cost that a company incurs. Next, we look at the work from home cost. So what is happening is that a lot of companies who are sort of telling their employees to work from home have been shelling out that extra buck in terms of either a recurring cost or a one-time infra cost. So we are here taking a recurring cost of about 1,000 rupees per employee per month. This includes electricity, internet, power, and in a lot of IT tech companies, it also includes certain softwares to sort of fend them against cyber security risks. We also include a one-time home infra cost, which is about 4,000 rupees per employee per month. Sorry, this is a one-time, so not per month. It is a one-time cost of 4,000 rupees. So this is mostly to help employees set up their home office. So this is the cost angle that we're looking at. Now, next we're looking at an efficiency, because ultimately these are the two things that we're comparing. From an efficiency point of view, we have to take into account the efficiency at office and the efficiency at home. So we have arrived at an efficiency of 91% efficiency for employees who work from office. And we are arriving at an efficiency of 70%. This 91% is basis the typical bell curve of appraisal that we see in most companies. Coming back to efficiency at home, we arrive at a 70% efficiency. This is basis a psychometric analysis done by a company called Skykey. They did an analysis based on several traits that are needed for an employee to work from home. So basis that, we came at a employee efficiency rate of 70% for those employees who work from home. So this is the basic assumption and basis based on which we have done our study. So like I mentioned, we have a base case scenario here where we have a total employee strength of 1,000. We have office space of 90,000. In this base case scenario, there is absolutely no one who's working from home, and the employee efficiency here we have arrived at is 91% through mathematical deduction, and the cost is about 14.6 crore for the year. So this is a base case, and we are going to be comparing the different scenarios to this base case. For example, if we look at the first scenario, here we are we've taken a 50% work from home. So when we take a 50% work from home, what happens is that there is definitely a drop in cost, like you can see, of 14.3 crore. So we have to also take into account here that we are assuming here that the organization has not been able to give up its space. So we are assuming a 90,000 square feet of space across all the scenarios, because it is not always possible for the organization, for the client, to give up space immediately. So here what we see is that the cost does come down, yes, but if you look at efficiency in this first scenario, it comes down to about 81%. So the delta in savings is about 2.5% basis the cost, but the efficiency is a further drop, like you're saying, from 91% to 81%. Similarly, I'll also take you through scenario 3. In scenario 3, what we're projecting is that we have, again, office space of 90,000 square feet. The company has about 1,000 employees, and the company decides that 20% of its employees are going to be working from home. So in such a scenario, we get a 87% employee efficiency. Totally, this includes the employees working from home and the employee working from office. The total organization's employee efficiency is about 87%. And the cost savings is about 1%. So what we are seeing is that overall, when a company works from home, it is directly proportional to savings, yes, but it is indirectly proportional to employee efficiency. So when there is a trade-off between cost and efficiency, the sensitivity to efficiency is much higher than the sensitivity to cost. That means the cost is not going to be impacted as much, the savings is not going to be as much as the dip in efficiency. So we have, of course, done this basis of few scenario, and we just wanted to portray this and let you know that this is what we've done. We'd be happy to help you if there is some specific understanding that your client needs with respect to this, or you would like to customize it according to a client need. We'd be happy to help. So please do reach out to us. We can definitely sit together and work it out depending on what the client's objectives are. So that is it from on this part. Next, from the research desk in July and August, let's see what we can expect. We have a density report which came out a couple of days ago. This is based on an occupier survey that was run pan-India. We had we are going to be coming out with a semi-annual office report, which will be out by the 15th of this month. And later this month, we'll be having an industrial report. Also in August, which I've not mentioned here, we'll be having a third episode of our research webinar, which will be taking place in Mumbai. So that's it from my side. Over to Megha. Megha, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Vaishnavi. That was quite interesting. And I hope that the audience also found it quite useful for their occupiers. Now I'll just take a few questions that we have. So one of them is the supply hasn't changed for Bangalore much. What are the reasons? Is it related to pre-commitments in the city?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, we have recorded a few pre-commitments last year, and definitely a project which has received pre-commitments will be more liable to come up earlier. But more interestingly, the reason is that most of these projects are already in near completion stages. So we believe that the developers are quite confident that considering the scenario remains the same, they will be able to complete the projects and get the OC on time. So it's a mix of both these aspects.
Okay, and would you want to share the details of the 5 points that that the matrix or the model had taken into account? Those aspects which were based on efficiency. Maybe
Right.
a couple of also help.
Sure. So basically, I would just take a minute to explain how we did that. So what we did was we looked at a survey which was done by this artificial intelligence manpower company, research company, which analyzed all the workplace traits that that employees need in order to work effectively from home. So they did it for a typical IT company, but of course we sort of extrapolated for a mid-sized company in India. So they looked at various aspects where they said that how open is an employee to learning and exploring, how good is an employee with communication, how good is an employee to be able to work on their own without being very instruction driven. So these are very key characteristics that are required in someone working from home. And in fact, interestingly, their survey said that in the IT sector, only 0.5% of employees can work from home. The others don't have the requisite skills to work from home. But of course, we didn't go by that because.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And when was the survey done? Just
this survey was
early this year?
April 2020.
Okay, the first quarter. That's interesting. One more question coming up. Will commercial office rents drop across cities? Now I'll take that up. Yes, few micro markets will see softening of rents. However, not in immediate future. Today we had released our office numbers also. To be very honest, the expectations that the demand would, soften or be subdued is there, definitely, but not at a rapid pace that people would have thought, right? So we are still clocking around 16.8 million square feet of office leasing for the first half of this year. Which is quite decent, which is just a drop of 1/3 from last year, right? So yes, there are possibilities of rental drop, but not substantial ones. core markets will still continue to see stable rents, and in certain cases where there are very low vacancies, it might be inching up by end of this year. But in a nutshell, yes, they will soften if there is a prolonged period of lockdown in certain states and situation gets worse. Okay, there's another one which says that is Bangalore only the GIC hub in India? Which are the other cities?
So Bangalore is the biggest GIC hub in India, followed by Delhi NCR. We had done a study last year comparing how GICs and tech companies specifically have lease space for GICs. So Bangalore has been the largest, followed by Delhi NCR, and then you have Pune and Hyderabad. So this is typically the ranking that we saw.
Okay, and this is I'll just add to that because this is purely a function of the talent pool. And typically what GICs follow is where the office demand follows in terms of the ancillary industry. They tend to pick up spots or markets from that. So yes, there's a high correlation with the general office services demand and GIC. One more question. This is quite interesting. Can we expect a rise in per seat cost in co-working sector after the social distancing norms? Any insight from you on that? Anything that we've heard on Bangalore, or I'll take that up?
I think, frankly, co-working sector, things don't seem all that bright right now. So
yes. So I think there's a double whammy about the co-working sector, right? Majority, as our survey also said, that majority of the occupiers would want a staggered way that employees come to office, right? And co-working sectors have seen their own bit of challenges with occupancy rates and complete shutdown. So as they get back to business, there is no immediate rise in seat costs because people are still reluctant to move out. Even in co-working spaces where they have proper safety and wellness norms, people are still reluctant, right? But in an overall scheme of things, where hub and spoke model will be followed at large by occupiers, we will see that some of the key co-working players may see filling up seats very fast, right? And with the consolidation sinking in, we in the medium term we see the cost per seat to be quite steady, not escalating. So this is how the play will be. No immediate rise in per seat cost for co-working players, and definitely there has been a reduction in other aspects in terms of collaboration and all that co-working players do because they have to do now social distancing norms, they have to let go of certain collaborative spaces, etc. That's how the sector will look forward. Okay, one more question, which is the most okay, I will not economical, but which is the most attractive market in Bangalore from an IT perspective?
Well, it depends. I mean, on what the organization is looking at.
If cost is the only criteria.
So right now,
sorry. So which segments are low?
So right now, North Bangalore is something which has been lower compared to your Outer Ring Road, but we don't see that kind of social infra development happening there, which an ORR or a Whitefield has.
So it's a long-term play, basically.
It is a long-term play. Yes, definitely.
Okay. So currently, would you say ORR is the only prominent stretch where occupiers will be looking at?
Well, definitely. I mean, the rentals there are rising as late as this quarter. Of course, things have been different, but the kind of growth that ORR rentals have seen over the last year has been phenomenal. And ORR definitely, in fact, because of the vacancy, it's a very tight market. The vacancy there, like I mentioned, is about 2.5%. So there was a lot of demand which is feeding into Whitefield because of that. But okay. Of course, if you're looking at a cost perspective, then ORR is not the. I mean.
Okay, it's not the place to be. But yes, there are other emerging markets in Bangalore also,
right.
which is a long-term play.
Right. Even
Correct.
Hosur Road. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, there is one question. What is the pan-India demand forecast for this year? So as I said, we've released the numbers today itself. We are expecting about 36 million square feet, around that, to happen across major 7 cities. As we mentioned earlier, Bangalore will lead the pack, followed by Delhi, NCR, and Hyderabad, right? But yes, interestingly, the first half of this year has seen a good amount of supply which has come in this year, which is just around 2% higher than last year. So which means that the COVID-related issues in the construction industry set in slightly late, especially in cities like Bangalore, which were relatively better off than other cities like Mumbai, right? So overall, the supply was promising this year, although absorption, as we all know, took a beating, was 36% down compared to last year, if you're looking at the first half numbers. So I don't think so there are more questions here. In case you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. We will be happy to take them up. And also about this matrix, if there are any other aspects that you would want us to bring in for your clients, which would be interesting. It's a very good trade-off matrix that talks about productivity, which I think other players in the market have actually missed and have just focused on cost aspects. So we will do that. Needless to say, the recording of this webinar will also be available. So stay tuned. We will have another one coming up later this month or early August. And some of the reports which will be available are mentioned on the screen, which are semi-annual office reports and the industrial report. So with this, we would like to conclude the research webinar. Happy to take questions. Please stay safe and have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Megha. Thanks, Vaishnavi. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. And we'll keep you posted on the next session. Thank you so much. Have a great week.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.